Chapter 10. Living in the USA. Many people who have never been to the USA recognize it from films and TV programs. Then there is the work of the artist Edward Hopper, whose pictures of ordinary American people, streets, and houses, in the city and in the country, make us think of old films. But what is life in America really like? Most Americans who have jobs live more comfortably than people in almost any other country in the world. They usually work a 40-hour week, and they have 2 weeks holiday a year, as well as holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas. In 60% of families, the husband and the wife both work. Although more than 40% of the land is farmed, not many people work as farmers, and fewer Americans work in factories than in the past. Most jobs are now in places like hospitals, banks, hotels, and shops. If you do not have a job, and around 6% of Americans do not, life is hard. The government gives you a little money, but it is not enough to buy everything that you need. How many Americans are poor? Around 13% of all Americans are poor, but 25% of black people and 22% of Hispanic people are poor. The money in the USA is the dollar, which contains 100 cents. Some coins have special names. 5 cents is a nickel, 10 cents is a dime, and 25 cents is a quarter. In taxis, restaurants, and other places, people give a tip, extra money on top of the price. Without this extra money, many workers do not have enough money to live. Americans do not use kilograms and kilometers, but pounds and miles. Dates are also written differently from dates in Britain. The 4th of July is 7-4, not 4-7. Sadly, the world learned about how Americans say dates on the 11th of September 2001, the date that we remember as 9/11. Because the USA is such a big country, the time changes as you travel from one side to the other. When it is 12 midday in New York, Eastern Time, it is 11 a.m. in Kansas, Central Time, 10 a.m. in Arizona, Mountain Time, and 9 a.m. in Seattle, Pacific Time. And the time in Alaska is 8 a.m. and in Hawaii 7 a.m. The pictures by the artist Norman Rockwell tell stories of the life of ordinary families from the 1920s to the 1970s. Although they are often too happy to be true, they give us an idea of life in small towns that has not all disappeared yet. 2/3 of Americans own their homes, often with a garden. At least 85% of families have a car, and more than 75% of Americans drive to work. They also use their car to go to drive-in restaurants, coffee shops, or even banks. Henry Ford, who made the famous Ford cars, was born in Michigan, near Detroit. His Model T, 1908, was the first car that was cheap enough for ordinary people. Anyone can drive a Ford, they said, and by 1918, half the cars in the USA were Model Ts. Now, more and more Americans drive very big cars called SUVs. The USA does not have a state religion, and no religion is allowed in schools. Instead, every morning American students make a promise to the American flag. But over 80% of Americans belong to a Christian church, and Christianity is very important, particularly in the South of the USA. In some states, books are not allowed in schools if they say something different from the Christian story of the beginning of the world. Some churches are just for black people, and black churchmen like Martin Luther King and Jesse Jackson have worked very hard for the rights of black people. One large religious group is the Latter-day Saints, or Mormons, who live mainly in Utah. They have very strong ideas about how to dress and are against alcohol and tobacco. If they do not want to go out, Americans can stay at home and watch television. Nearly all families have a TV, and an ordinary family watches more than 7 hours a day. There are over 10,000 TV stations, and most of them belong to businesses, not to the government. American TV programs are sold all over the world. There are more than 1,500 daily newspapers, but most of them are just for one city. The most popular newspaper is USA Today, which sells 5 million copies a day. You can buy papers like the New York Times and the Washington Post everywhere, as well as the magazines Time and Newsweek. And, of course, Americans love to shop. The supermarket first appeared in America, and now many shops are open 24 hours a day. Some of the biggest shopping centers in the world are in the USA. Mall of America in Minneapolis has over 500 shops and covers 1.25 million square meters. You could put 32 Boeing 747 planes into it. Americans have to pay if they visit a doctor or go to hospital, but they do not usually pay to go to school. Schools, like the laws, are different from state to state, but in most places, everyone goes to school for about 12 years. The years are called grades. Grades 1 to 5 are elementary school, 6 to 8 are middle school, and 9 to 12, high school. About 85% of students finish high school and celebrate with a party known as a prom. They also make a yearbook. This has photos of all the students in their class and some information about each person. Films like American Graffiti and The Breakfast Club have shown what life is like at an American high school. About half the students who finish high school go on to study for another 2 or 4 years. Harvard and Yale in the East and Berkeley in California are among America's famous universities. Most Americans enjoy sports, and baseball, basketball, and football are popular. American football is a very different game from European football. Players carry the ball more than they use their feet. But the favorite sport in the USA is baseball. The film Field of Dreams tells the story of a farmer from Iowa in the Midwest, played by Kevin Costner, who dreams of the Chicago White Sox team and makes a baseball field for them in a field on his farm. Baseball is played by 2 teams of 9 people. Each player from the first team tries to hit the ball and run round a big square from corner to corner. The players from the second team try to catch the ball. Players try to get all the way round the square before the other team can get the ball to a corner. After 3 players go out, it is the turn of the second team to hit the ball. Some famous teams are the Los Angeles Dodgers, the New York Yankees, and the Boston Red Sox. Perhaps the greatest baseball player in history was Babe Ruth. He was born in 1895 and played with the Boston Red Sox and then the New York Yankees. He died in 1948, but he is still remembered today.